Thank you. Go ahead, Bill.
Good morning, everybody. I would like to always start with asking Ganesha to grant us his blessings for our endeavors today. So just sit back, take a deep breath, and relax, and we'll be doing a few chants to get as many planetary channels open for us so that we can all be connected through space. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha, Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha, Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Devanam cha rishinam cha gurum kanchan sandibam, buddhi bhutam trilokesham, tam namami brihaspatim. Om Adityaye Somaye Mangalaye Buddhaya cha Guru Shukra Shanibhyascha Rahuve Ketuve Namaha. Nilanjana Samabhasam Raviputram Yamakrajam Jaya Tam namami Shanaishcharam. Good morning, everybody. I'm really happy to be here, and I would like to thank ACFA, first of all, for sponsoring these half-hour webinars. I think it's a great service to the astrology community and for people of all levels. Today I'm going to be talking about Surya, the Lord of the Signs, and many of you know Surya is the deity who is associated with the sun, one of the many. And so I started thinking about this a while ago when actually I was mantras. And so we're going to about a half hour together to start exploring some ideas that I've been working with, and I really invite you to take what is appropriate for you and don't worry about the rest. Throughout the presentation, I'm trying to introduce more Sanskrit words into my own practice. I think they hold a really powerful key. But I want to make this clear to everyone. So you'll see another sign, what we call signs are called, referred to as Rashis in Sanskrit. We'll spend a little time on that as we go through the different terms. So just to begin with, I would like to introduce myself to many of you. I initially encountered Vedic astrology living in Philadelphia in the 1990s, and I met a Vedic astrologer. His name is K.B. Mann. He's from Agra, and it was a very interesting time. I was in a Rahu Dasha, so all I really cared about was when I was going to become a famous opera singer, and he actually told me I was not going to do that. So I kind of discounted all his advice. But sure enough, it came to pass that when my Dasa period changed into Jupiter, I noticed all my priorities and everything changed. So I really started thinking about how powerful, how unexpected it could be, and it helped me through that transition. So in 2002, I was given a membership by my brother and sister-in-law to ACFA, and I was able to reconnect and really began more formalized study. And I started studying with Ronnie Dreyer in New York. And then in 2003, I attended the ACFA conference in Phoenix. And I would encourage everyone, if you get a chance to come to the conferences, it's a really terrific way to learn a lot, and you get to hear a lot of teachers. And at that conference, I met Camilla Sutton, who has become my primary teacher since then. And I still always listen to Ronnie whenever I get a chance. Her teaching is fantastic, especially since she's concentrated in Sanskrit more and more. In 2005, I completed ACFA Level 1 certification, which was a really unique offering then, the first really formalized structured program with a solid curriculum. And now there's several programs out there, which is a great advantage for those of us who are trying to understand this vast topic. In 2008, I finished my master's in social work at New York NYU, and so I use my counseling training in part of my practice here. And then in 2012, I was awarded the Jyotish Shastri Diploma from the Kamila Academy of Vedic Studies in Chandigarh, India. So now I continue to study, and I always put that first because I think that's the key. And I do consultations, and in the last 2 years, I've been given several opportunities to teach, which is an exciting opportunity. I've listed my contacts here at the bottom of the slide. I also just started a free monthly newsletter this year, so you can sign up on billsinclair.com for that thing. So let's move into what we're going to be studying today, which is our points for exploration. I have 4 questions that I think I'd like to consider with you. First of all, who is Surya? What can we learn about him? What is the solar zodiac? And what components compose that? And then how do I move into, you know, like how can I use this to help understand my charts and the charts of others? At the end, we'll have time for general questions. I would encourage you to make notes or write things in, and Angela will be gathering them, so we'll have a discussion then. And my kind of hope for today is that you can identify some new ways to think of the signs, and perhaps to start to read about the personalities that inhabit the signs. We're going to be talking about kind of a methodology I want to share today about how to approach these signs. Because I recognized in my own study after several years that I just kind of thought of the signs as a list of adjectives. And through the studies of the deities that are associated with them in the different scriptures and the Puranas and things like that, you can really get a felt sense of that energy field through the personalities that inhabit it. As Angela said, this presentation will be available on the AKVA YouTube web channel. Great. So let's start with Surya. Who is Surya? And there's 2 little snippets of a poem I wanted to share with you. The first is from the Hymn to the Planets by Vyasa, and it says, I worship the sun who has the luster of a red hibiscus flower, who has the power of perception, of great effulgence, the dispeller of darkness, who destroys all sins, and the maker of the day. And then in the Yajurveda we find, I know that great being who has the effulgence of the sun, beyond darkness. Only knowing him can one go beyond death. There is no other path to this journey. So if we look at these 2 quotes, immediately we see the word effulgence is used in both of them. And I got to be honest, I had to look that one up. And it says it's shining brightly, radiant, emanating joy or goodness. Part of the characteristics of the sun. In the first quote, we see description. The sun has the power of perception. He's the dispeller of darkness. It's he who destroys all sins, and he creates the day. Second one, there's a very interesting thing. It says that I know that great being who has the effulgence of the sun. So while the first one's describing more of what we think of the sun as a physical manifestation, in the Vedic quote, they're going deeper and they're showing you that there's a being who is behind, who is manifesting through what we see as the sun. And only knowing that great being can we transcend death, and there's no other path. So this is this link of the, they call it the the universal soul as part of the sun, and we find reference to that in these quotes. Then when we look at the Bhagavata Purana, which I've drawn on heavily, and it's a fantastic resource, and there's some very nice translations out there that I would recommend you can pick up and read. It's like a great storybook in a way. God, who is the same as the soul and first cause of the world. So again, we see a reference to that universal divine being as manifesting through the sun, has been spoken of by the seers under many names. So they're showing that this one thing is expressing in many forms. And in the next verse they say, because of his, meaning the universal cosmic being, often known as Vishnu, his Maya, which has no beginning, Sri Hari, has been called by 9 names as time, place, activity, the doer, an instrument, duty, sacred text, material substance, and the fruit of heaven. So here we have, if we start to think of the sun, we have 9 manifestations or attributes of the sun that are given. And they all go back to this idea of the divine being which is manifesting through the sun. And they use the word Maya. And so I went back to look up Maya, and what I always think of as illusion, deception, but other definitions of Maya are also compassion and sympathy. And so this gives a more benevolent aspect of the sun, that it's through the beneficence, the compassion and sympathy of this great being that the sun has arisen. And through the sun, he takes all these activities that shape our earth and our world so that we may evolve and approach, ultimately transcend death and return. So there's a moksha theme here, and this also relates to all the planets and how they will be moving. So we just review this. I put it together. He has these things. These 9 attributes give the kala is the time, it's the when, the where, and the what of what is done. Karta is the how, who does it, the means and cause of any action, and the fruit and the outcome. There's the sacred text he's related to, this moksha idea, material substance, and actually all deeds. So really everything can be found through the sun and through extraction, the solar zodiac. The next verse in the Purana shares that assuming the form of time out of those 9, the Lord runs his course through the 12 months beginning from Chitra. So here we have an idea that this, as he moves through each of the signs, he will assume the form. So each month is basically tied to a manifestation of the sun. So I wanted to then move into the components that make up the solar zodiac. And I thought there's macro elements and ones that are related to each Rashi. So the first one is we begin with a singularity of the word Om, and that is the sun as the unmanifest cosmic person. And then if we watch the sun, we notice that the days get longer and shorter. So we have 2 halves of the sun. As he moves northerly, it's called the Uttarayana course, and as he moves to the south, it's called the Dakshinaya course. So we can begin through this one moment to understand that more material things are done in the Uttarayana course. It moves higher and higher. It draws us into the world. And then through the second half, it draws us deeper into darkness or into our internal world of spiritual pursuits. If we pay attention to this, we see that there's then each of those 2 halves can be divided at the midpoint of the transit on each direction to the north and to the south. We find the equinox. And so this is a moment of balance. And through that we have 4 quadrants which we associate to the 4 cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west. So we have a division of 2 and we have a division of 4 for the movement of the sun. When we look on Earth, we notice that there are different seasons that occur as the sun moves through. And so in India, there are 6 seasons, and they start from the pale green of the top. Vasant is the spring, Grishma is the summer, Varsha is the rainy season, Sharad is the autumn, and then Hamanta is the winter, and Shishira is they call it dew season. And so these are the 6 seasons that happen based on the movement of the sun that shape our experience. Then we look and we can see that there's not only 4 cardinal directions, but there is 8 sub-directions. And these are shown in the Panchang, in the Drig. The 10th day is called the Drig. It's ruled by what's Drigs, or directions, D-R-I-G-S. Camilla, in her book on personal Panchang, has a nice section on this. And so we see there's an energy or deity that rules each of the directions. So in the east, we see at the top Indra and his Shakti Purva there, and that indicates power. So we see that every day is born anew as the sun rises in the east, and that relates to the power of manifestation. So we have so like east, northeast, north, which is ruled by Soma and wealth, and so on. We have 8 directions. But in addition to that, the sun holds our planet in space in an orbit. And so we have an upward direction and a downward direction, and that's ruled by Brahma in the upward direction, and Antanaga is the support at the bottom of the whole thing. And then finally we get to the signs. So now we can look at this direction and see that if we want to really explore the powers that are shaping Aries from a larger direction, we can include that, first of all, it's ruled by the east, as Parashara says. It's influenced by Indra. It happens in the Uttarayana section of the thing and is related to late spring. So that's a look generally at the macro forces that tie into this. And I just added also the months of the year so we could see when the sun is transiting through each section. And so I started to think about these numbers, which is the 2 directions, the 2 ayanas, the 4 directions, the 6 seasons, the 10 protections of the Drigs, the 12 signs. And I started to think that, you know, if the sun rules everything, you take those 2 numbers and mirror it in the chakras of our body. So at the third eye, we find the 2 ayanas reflected in the 2 petals of the chakra at the brow. And so on. You can see each of them correlate. So while the sun on an external level is radiating the power which organizes and shapes the, on an internal level, those same dynamics are playing out on our internal structure. And we find in the Purana that the cosmic person, the great being, actually bears the same proportion when measured with, as man does, when measured with reference to the disposition of his limbs. So as you think of the Rashis, they're not out there floating in space. They're within us. All of space is within us. And I think that's a powerful way to work with this information. So let's move now to the macro level. And we see in the scriptures that the sun travels through the 12 signs, and in each month he has a batch of 6 attendants. They tell us in the Bhagavata Purana, and they give the list of all of those, which is really my larger study is understanding each of these, the 6 attendants and the Aditya. So each month we see an Aditya, and that is the form of the sun that is ruling that sign or manifesting in it. And these 12 Adityas were the fathers of the 33 crore of Devatas. So they are the fathers of all the divine beings. And I had to look up crore. So there's like 330 million gods or divine beings. And all of those are given by the sun. So this is reiterating in a mythic way how the sun shapes all our life. So each month he travels with a rishi, who is a singer of hymns. These are, many of us know, these are the great teachers. They hold the knowledge. They see the divine law and accept in terms of creation and knowledge. With him, there is the principle of divine knowledge. So if you want to know what knowledge a sign needs, study the stories and the names of the rishis, and you'll gain what knowledge they possess and what knowledge they bring. And as I was thinking of this yesterday, I thought, you know, it's interesting. We have 1 sun and 6 attendants. So the sun has 6 that are orbiting around him. They are attending to him. And so I find a correlation between these rishis and the planet Jupiter. This is my independent work. I haven't really validated, but I just wanted to offer this, that perhaps these planets are who are traveling with him each month, and that can help us to link into our planetary system. He also has an apsara. These are celestial nymphs born in the churning of the ocean of milk, who dwell in heaven and visit earth in different shapes. This is the principle of perception, which relates to the moon. And we have Gandharvas, celestial musicians who are really the guardians of Soma. Soma is immortality, and so we think of the principle of the sun as ruling our virility, and also relating to Venus, who has the secret of immortality. So these 3 are his divine attendants that relate to forces that draw us into a higher realm and the world of enlightenment. There's also 3 forces that deal with this plane and are often called asuras. Surya means the light, and asura is those that do not see the light. So this is what are called often rakshasas or demons or things like that. I really prefer to think of them as beings that don't see the light of enlightenment but focus on the worldly elements. So the first is called the Yaksha. It's a protector of the forest and mineral earth. They are benevolent and inoffensive beings. So this relates to our principle of communication, and the earth communicates to us through nature. It's to Mercury. Rakshasas are beings that are guarding and watching. They annihilate protection. In the literature, the Puranas, you'll see they're always gaining tapas and strength, which then they kick the devas out of heaven and make heaven more like earth. And then the devas have to come back and defeat them. So they're always wanting more power on earth. And so I do believe that that relates to the principle of needing security and the planet Mars. And lastly, we come to the Nagas. These are half human, half serpents who support everything. They are the world outside of our human world. It's the darkness. And so we think of Saturn as the dark planet that moves us through our life pattern and brings our karma to fruition. So that's just one way of looking at these beings, and I think it's important to always be striving to understand what is the imagery we're given in this and how can we apply that. So just to review, I put it together. We have the different elements of the sun that manifest in the universe and also in the chakra system within us. And then we see that the Aditya travels with both sides, beings of light and beings of darkness, because the sun is everywhere and defines the light and the darkness. So we come to our last section here, which is how can I use this information? And I think the first thing is to meditate on the movements of Surya, the graph. Watch the sun, notice the change of the days and the seasons. See how that relates to what we find in our charts and our moods, true transits, things like this. Then it's to develop a comfort with the different classes of beings, because actually all of there's vast information that is being conveyed to us through the Vedas and through the Puranas. And to become familiar with the story really brings this alive to us. So, and then, which leads me to the next part, is to read the stories. Start to read the Vedas and the Puranas. Learn about their lives. Learn about the acts of these characters, and it will help us gain a richer understanding of each of the Rashis. In that, translate the names. They all have meanings that reveal their character. I mean, they're not named Joe, Sam, and Fred. I mean, they're named different qualities of humanity. There's a great book here that I use that actually I got from one of Bill Levicy's articles. It's called the Penguin Book of Hindu Names, and it's a terrific resource to just get a quick translation. There's also online Sanskrit dictionaries that are free. Then finally, I encourage you to look for patterns in the names and the numbers you get. So like when I saw he had 6 attendants, then you think, well, what do we have as 6 and we have 6 planets, things like that. With that in mind, I just want to move over here and just take one example of how I applied this to understanding the different signs. So there's 6 seasons, the Ritus. So you look here that there's spring covers 2 signs, and the solar months are Madhu and Madhava. So you see these have the same root. This is something, there's a connection here. Then in the lunar month we have Chitra and Vishaka, the nakshatras that many of us know. And these all relate to the Rashis, the Pisces and Aries. And even like Mina and Mesha, there's something kind of connected there. And then we start to look at each of the names of the attendants which are given. And there's always pairs in each of the 6 seasons that show us a connection. So just to take as an example, the Rakshasas in both places, which are kind of the Rakshasas are the Mars type elements. It's the looking for security and action. So in Pisces, we find the story of Heti. And Heti, his brother is Praheti. Heti in Pisces found that happiness could be gained through having children. And so this shows us a link from Pisces back into creation. Pisces has an element of progeny. Whereas in Praheti, he realized that which comes in Aries, his brother decided not to have children, to seek, to do tapas and attain enlightenment. So it's very interesting because this, for me, opened up a new dimension that the Rashis are showing us the continuation of the wheel. This is what they bring, is they keep us involved so that we can continue to progress until we can transcend. Pisces is not the end. It is the end of a cycle, but it's also the beginning of the next cycle. So you can see that there's just word matches. Taurus and Gemini, the two Gandharvas are Haha and Huhu. We have the Apsaras of Pramloka and Anumloka. I mean, we see all these words. So this is one approach I took, was just saying, hey, that kind of looks similar, and research it and then find that there's relations to all of these things. And I'll just leave this up for a minute. In the second season, you see here Tapas and Tapasya are the two solar months ruled by Saturn. And those of us that have been through our Saturn transits understand that there's a lot of tapas. The correct approach to Saturn is tapas. Do the work, build the strength. You know, it's not a time to mess around. And the Rakshasas here are Vata and Varka. So that's one thing. I just leave this up so you'll have these. You can find these online if you Google them. So just as we come into the last section, I wanted to share one example of what I've kind of put together for Mina, who is so Mina is Pisces. And I would encourage you to start to translate the Sanskrit words because, for instance, Mithuna is Gemini. And so we think of Gemini, but Mithuna in Sanskrit relates to intimate acts and to actually the sexual act. So it leads a new flavor to what is Gemini about. And then you read the myths and you see there's a lot of stories about proper sexual conduct related in the sign of Gemini, which was not something I had ever thought of, but it adds a different dynamic. And then you think naturally it's from the 8th house. So there is a sexual element there. So it's been a really exciting kind of a vast research for me. To get back to Pisces here, we see that the solar month is Madhu, which means honey, sweet, agreeable, pleasant, and it's related to Soma. So in the name of the solar month, we find Soma, and this is related to the natural house. Soma is the juice of immortality. And so we see a link here to Pisces as the natural moksha sign. And so I've given all of these. Another thing I found in Mina is, in Pisces, is the Naga here is Vasuki. Now Vasuki is the Naga who helped churn the ocean of milk, and from which everything came, you know, all kinds of things came up. We got the elephant that Indra rides, we had poisons, and then finally Amrita came up. So this relates a major myth to the sign of Pisces. Since Vasuki is here, he's the one that helped churn this. And so we see that Pisces itself holds that myth, and which is the changing of the world, so it can be chaotic. And this is when the cosmic ocean changed from milk to salt water. So there's so much information that gives you a flavor of Pisces. So you think that this brings a churning in the chart wherever it is. It also brings great transformation. And that also sometimes you have to go through the poisons before you get the blessings. All of those kind of things can be associated with Pisces. And then the Aditya is Dhāta. And so three things about Dhāta that help me understand Pisces better. First of all, his name translates to one who establishes. He's the creator. He's the founder and supporter. So all of these elements of creation and support are found in Pisces. He's married to Ayati, and her name means extending the lineage and posterity. So we see again, and the thing is, once you study these names, it's not really subtle. They give you the themes a lot. This is about lineage and posterity as well as moksha. And his brother is Vidata, and he writes the destiny of all the newborn. So this is the great reconciliation, totaling up. Do you go to moksha? Do you come back in? And when you come back in, what do you work on? Is found in the legends and myths surrounding each of these personalities that we meet. So we can come to understanding Pisces, the sun, as the creative force. So I think of it as like Aries may be the manifestation. Pisces is really where the creation occurs. It's the churning of the ocean. So Dhāta and his brother writes all the destiny. This is the time in the womb, and we see that Heti and Ayati, the two characters, both deal with children and progeny. And so it's the beginning of spring, which comes to fruition then. So the full moon when the sun is there is in Chitra, in the month. And that's the celestial architect. So I think you can put an understanding as this inter-utero kind of like the rehearsal before the performance kind of a section. And there's also three things that tell us about cosmic knowledge. Dhāta is the son of Kayati, and Kayati, who is perception and knowledge. And one of the rishis is the rishi here, Palasya, gave us all of the stories in the Puranas. So that's a lot of cosmic knowledge. And then Vasuki that is there, and he is the eldest of the Sarpas. So the last slide I have is just to share with you one chart. This is Albert Einstein, 14th of March, 1897, at 11:30 in Ulm, Germany. So you see his chart is very heavy with Pisces. So this gives in the 10th house of career and public knowledge. And this is a person who indeed did bring about secret knowledge, unknown knowledge, and theoretical knowledge, and has driven, now generations of research, which are now beginning to prove his theories. So I think he's kind of an interesting Piscean character. So I just want to thank you for spending time with me today, and again thank ACFA for this great opportunity that we have to study all together and increments. And if you haven't visited their website, I would definitely check it out. And if you're looking for structured programs, it's a great way to really get a good survey of the skills you need. I know it's been crucial to my education. I wanted to leave this up just for a couple minutes to give you the different books that I used in preparing this presentation. And then I think that's the end. I'll turn it over to Angela and see if there's any questions.
Great. Bill, thank you so much. An incredible presentation. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to go ahead and type them in now. And I'll give people a minute or so to do that, and then we'll move forward. This is an incredible map that you created, Bill. Just it ties everything together. It's just an incredible map. I think that you should print these and sell them.
Well, I have to get I have one printed up here on the wall so that I can look at it. Yeah. I mean, I was reading Dr. Charek's book, and I've, so many times, I gotta say, people go through this stuff, and I always kind of glazed over because I didn't really understand how I would ever use it so much, except for the key was the 10, that when I was really doing a lot of work with Panchang through Camilla's book, that you think like, oh, so there's a link here somehow. So, yeah.
Well, and it was nice to see you then pull up like the chakra chart, and so we could kind of see the interweaving through all the systems. It's just really amazing, and I thoroughly enjoyed this.
Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah.
So it looks like we're not really getting any questions. There was so much information here.
I think so. I'm sorry, folks. Yeah.
No, it was fantastic. So because we're not getting any immediate... Oh, wait a minute. We're getting one here. We have a question. Can you expand upon Shishira?
Oh, so Shishira is listed as due season, and there may be someone out there that can answer this better than I, because I've never actually been in India during the Shishira. It's a dewy season, and when I gave this section of the talk in India, several of the people, Camilla, I think, actually even said that, sometimes I think Shishira may be the deeper winter. So it's one, so they have 2 winters there, and Shishira, I think vegetables come in the spring. But what's interesting is that the Shishira is both of the Saturn signs. So you have Capricorn and Aries that make up this season. And so, I was looking across at Varsha is the rainy season where we get the sun and the moon ruling signs. So there's some polarity there between the two. And if you look at Capricorn is where the sun starts to move to a northerly direction. So there's something there that precedes spring. And Aquarius has information in there about the seed of life. And like there's Parjanya is the bringer of the rain, is the solar aspect there. So it's almost like during Capricorn, everything kind of, all the sap withdraws and goes into the root. And this is when it's like there's 2 seasons before we get manifestation. Shishira is the time, dynamically I understand it, where it's like the seed of life is reborn and then it begins to create into Pisces. So I want to know more like experientially about Shishira. I just haven't had time to research that. And then to look at how does it relate to those 2 Saturnian signs. And of course I'm in Saturn Mahadasa, so it's the one thing I don't really understand about these things. But thank you for asking.
Well, one of the things I was just thinking about when you talked about that was how, you know, at that time of the year, we actually get the conception of light. You know, just that in the Saturn energy, we get just that very simple conception. It's not actually a birth, it's just the pinpoint of light. So there's the start, the very, very beginning of the manifestation is what made me think of. Let me see, do we have any other questions?
Well, and the other thing I'm looking at is Yama rules that direction, and of course Yama is Saturn's older brother, and they were very conflicted. So it's very interesting to see that they're lined up there. And it's exactly opposite Leo, where we find the myth of Chaya and the birth. So there's some element in there about this kind of internal conflict between, you know, Dharma and feeling unaccepted. It's kind of a dark, probably a heavy emotional time too. Yeah.
Yeah. Great meditation though.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Let's see. Okay, so it doesn't look like we have any more questions. People can visit your website, billsinclair.com, and if you do have some more questions come up, feel free to email Bill.
Yes.
Is that all right, Bill?
Yeah, bill@billsinclair.com.
Great. Okay, so thank you, everybody. Thank you, Bill. We're so grateful.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for attending next month at Ronnie Gail Dreyer's event. So thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.